We are here this night remembering Jesus. How is it that we find ourselves perhaps in a time of that dark night of the soul, times when we feel like we can't find Jesus, when we don't know where God is, when we wonder, how is it that things could be where they are or how they are? On this night, we hear the words of the disciples. We hear about betrayal. What we don't hear as much of tonight as we will and we have is the unbridled depth of the love that God has for us. We heard it in Debbie's voice. When we hear those words, when he looks and says, I know you will betray me. And as each cock crows, how does it feel in your stomach? How do you hear those words yet again? How do we hear the story of Judas? How does it feel in our heart? We imagine Jesus hanging on the cross with criminals on both sides. We imagine the crowd. We hear the crowd saying, "Crucify him." We hear about the women. We hear about Mary Magdalene. They know where he was laid. Who are you this night? Where is God blasting? Where is God nudging your heart this night? We've spent time this Lent, some of us reading a book about forgiveness and spending time wondering how it is that different relationships or situations, how is it that they could be changed or rectified, or in some cases, how did they happen at all? And yet on the last night, one person very poignantly said, I think the one person that is the most difficult for us to forgive is ourselves, this person said. We've read this whole book, page after page. We've talked, and yet so little time. How is it? What are the steps we should take about forgiving ourselves? It is so hard for so many of us. And yet, how is it that we can go to Jesus with an open heart? How is it that somehow we could take this story? How is it that we could imagine this story as one of just somehow God loved us so much and forgives us? There is nothing we have done. The betrayal that we find ourselves doing are our own betrayals in our own life. And you are not alone. Each one of us in some way or another minimizes ourself or puts ourself off and doesn't really live into and listen to that, what God is calling us to do. We say, thank you, but over and over again we pray. Each week we say the confession. Lord, forgive me my sins. And each week we hear the absolution. And what does it mean? They're beautiful prayers. Okay, that's cool. I love a beautiful prayer. I am a sucker for a beautiful prayer. But perhaps we're being called to really free ourselves up of the judgment we feel like comes in our direction. And perhaps with God's grace, we could notice, how is it that this story is supposed to impact us? How are we supposed to change? What is the courageous path for us? I don't know. But we are certainly living in a time where we have all kinds of opportunities. We have opportunities to take care of our bodies. We have opportunities to take care of our earth. We had another policeman that takes care of our capital killed today, and another one is very ill. Violence has become the norm. What is the courageous path forward? How will we this year, at the beginning of this Lent, I think I preached a sermon and I was almost flippant. I know that's shocking. About if you have a discipline or you're giving up something, make sure that it matters. Because if come Easter, it hasn't mattered, don't bother. Jesus wants you to be in relationship with God and with Him and to be changed and choose that path forward. And for each and every one of us, it's different. So on this Good Friday, it is a dark evening. We hear, and thanks to all of your voices, we heard it beautifully. We heard this seminal story about our faith. But let it be a time for us to pause. Let it be a time for us to breathe and let some grace come into our lives and be open and willing to what might that path be that God is calling us forward. What might Easter mean for us this year? What might Easter be calling us to this year? Give yourself that blessing. Betray God again, even in my own words. Let's give God that blessing. Let's give God that blessing.